people about their porn habits was never a career goal of mine. I stumbled into this starting with a one-woman comedy show about sex, followed by some frank conversation with fraternity brothers, and then co-authoring a book about middle-aged sex. It was the lack of middle-aged sex we heard so much about that motivated me to talk to younger people and encourage them to develop communication skills and get them some key information so that they could enjoy sex until old age. Now kids look and say, who's the old regular lady talking about sex up there? And some of them think, oh, maybe when she was young, she was like this hot, sassy lassie who dissolved into this situation you see before you. And I assure them that is not the case, that I've been rockin' regular my whole life. And if I can land on my feet, anyone can. So when I first went into a fraternity to talk to college students, I assumed that young people had access to all the accurate sexuality information they would need because we had the internet. Then the questions that followed made it clear that being sexually misinformed was the norm, and it continues to be the norm. The subsequent conversations I had revealed that not only were there serious gaps in knowledge about sex, but alarmingly unrealistic expectations. And that's despite porn, and in many cases because of internet porn. Kids are confused about body image, genital image, erectile dysfunction, female pleasure, porn hijacking their imagination, and unfulfilling sex in hookups and long-term relationships. So it turns out that porn is not only used for masturbation, but also the go-to for information. And parents are reluctant to talk to their kids about sex. Schools either don't take sex ed on or feel pressure from parents to water down their health programs. And kids are too embarrassed to admit what they don't know, so they turn to the internet, which often leads to porn. Almost a third of what crosses the internet is porn. The number of clicks in a given month on internet porn sites equals the number of clicks on Netflix, Twitter, and Amazon all put together. Troubling. College students are reporting younger and younger ages when they first saw porn. It's common to hear from boys and young men that their first exposure was at age 9. Now, middle-aged men tend to defend internet porn, assuming that it's the modern-day version of the magazines they were looking at back in the day. It is not. It is not. And young men and boys are concerned about and confused by what they're seeing on the internet. So, I think the gap between porn and reality is making people really anxious about having relationships. They're anxious to have face-to-face conversations. And kids feel so much pressure to know all the answers. So, still, you may be wondering how this regular mom rolls into a fraternity to chat up sex and porn and all those matters. And my porn education started as a kid, playing baseball and ski racing with a band of boys, and the conversation has never stopped. So I didn't start doing this formally until I was almost 40. And when you're 40 in a fraternity or a sorority, you might as well be 80. And that's perfect because I'm so far outside their social realm that they will ask me questions, tell me their stories, and they're so grateful to have someone who is unfazed and someone who is, going to explain things. And they talk to me a lot about the porn they saw, surgically altered bodies, surgically altered genitals, and violent, aggressive sex. And the most clicked on porn is the most accessible porn, therefore the most viewed porn. And the porn industry is not going anywhere. My mission is to educate consumers to find better resources and to develop more realistic expectations, how bodies appear and how they respond. So it's very clear, how we got to this point where there's such widespread misinformation. Parents who avoid stepping into the role as the primary sexuality educators for their children, and schools without comprehensive sexuality education are complicit in allowing the internet to fill that void. Kids whose parents don't allow screens in their homes have friends with access to the internet who are eager to share. And parents should know that kids talk about finding the workaround to the filters before they even get to middle school. And kids who intentionally find porn or unintentionally stumble on it usually start with a very simple search. And parents are, very simple thing. So the parents freak out when they look at the history, when they look and see what their kids have been looking at, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. They're like, I haven't even taught sex ed, and look, my kid is now like neck deep in this really serious sexual stuff. And the thing is, kids will start with a word like boobies. Seriously, not boobs, not tits, not breasts, boobies, that's how you know they're young. And that leads to suggestions that quickly escalates to pretty violent porn. Parents, it's easy for parents to justify that they don't want to talk to their kids about sex. They think, I don't know, my kid, I want to protect their innocence. They haven't asked questions. They're really not interested. All kinds of things. Some even claim that their own 5th grade sex ed panned out so well that they think they'll wait till 5th grade. After writing a book about middle-aged sex, I can confidently say that the 5th grade sex ed is not sufficient. So the internet has made it necessary that we talk to kids much younger than we ever have before. The talk is no longer a thing. It's no longer enough. It's about many conversations over time. And current recommendations from most pediatricians is to use the accurate body names for, vagina, vulva, penis, testicles. That should be happening by age 3. Between the ages of 5 and 7, we're expected to discuss the basics of intercourse with our kids and to talk about internet safety and porn by age 9. These conversations are challenging. They're more important than they are awkward. Parents who have these conversations are better positioned to respond when their kids see explicit material. I am committed to this work because I believe people who enjoy their sexuality are happier and more at ease in the world. I've been overwhelmed by the endless reports I hear from young people who are having rampant below average sex. I mean, the bar is so low. And, I think people who are taking part in the normalized hookup culture in high school, college, and in the dating app world are tolerating so much crappy sex, so much. And they think, I'll just keep looking at porn and keep hooking up and I'll eventually figure it out. Many suffer in silence, thinking they're the only ones who are unfulfilled. And too self-conscious to admit what they don't know, they turn to the internet. And that often leads to more confusion and more self-doubt. People who take their time, get educated, choose their partners carefully, are in a better position to experience more fulfilling, connected, satisfying sexual relationships. They show women having these intense, multiple orgasms in most porn. And these orgasms are happening with absolute ease. Very few girls and women are experiencing orgasms in hookups and are rarely taught about their capacity for pleasure. Many women think they're not capable of orgasms. Plenty readily admit to faking orgasms to please their partner as if they're here to provide services. Now, as a society, we give girls and young women a mixed message, don't we? We tell them to speak up. Oh, but be nice. To be strong and athletic, but stay skinny. to assert yourself, but don't be a bitch. I call this compliance training. And it is directly related to the lack of sexual agency that so many young women experience. So young women tell me they learn what's expected of them sexually in porn. They feel like they're competing with porn. So female pleasure, it's elusive. The vulva, complicated terrain. The clitoris has 8,000 nerves, but it's hiding out under a hood, living in the labial folds, hiding out. Over 70% of women don't achieve orgasms with penetration alone, but we don't teach any of this. And now we have a clitoral crisis in America, people. Every woman is capable of orgasms if she has accurate information. Fellas of all orientations tell me that they usually get off in hookups, but they also say they are hoping for more than that. They want more connection, but putting themselves out there is a risk for shame and rejection, so they hold back. Heterosexual men tell me they cannot ask what women like. They're supposed to know what women like, and they're willing to rummage around until they figure out what works. It could be decades of rummaging. Lack of communication is a core problem with the unfulfilling sex that's going on out there. Now, genital image has been an issue for all genders, continues to be. It is common for transgender and gender non-binary people to experience gender dysphoria, which makes it challenging to find an understanding partner. Now, not all transgender people want to have bottom surgery or can afford it. And that adds to the problem of finding someone who's accepting and understanding. Heterosexual women get feedback from their male partners that they don't look like most women. Most women probably are women on screens in porn who are waxed from anus to navel and have had their labia surgically removed or reduced to look cleaner, younger, and improve the camera angles. Penis panic. Penis panic that's been an issue for generations and generations. The average size penis in porn is 8 inches. So any consumer, difficult to feel adequate when you're looking at that, right? And so porn has made this so much worse. When I tell a group of guys, when I say, you guys, do you know that the average size fully erect adult penis is 5.1 inches, 4 inches? They cheer. Some even jump up and high-five their buddies. So grateful to feel normal. I mean, pass that, take that with you and pass it along. It's a public service. It is a public service, people. Now, masturbation is healthy and normal for all genders. Magical even. But what fuels it has changed drastically. When I first went in those fraternities, I heard the concerns of these young men, and I said, you guys, what would happen if you didn't look at porn for 3 weeks? What do you think would happen? 6 months later, with one of them, I'm back in the same fraternity. 2 guys run up to me. They're so excited to tell me they tried my porn detox. I was like, okay, how did it go? First guy says, I've been off porn for 6 months. Erectile dysfunction is gone. The fantasy highlight reel is no longer violent. Sex with a partner is amazing again. I'm less depressed. I'm more productive. I have more energy. The other kid said all of those things were true when I was off porn for 2 months. But I'm a little concerned because they're starting to creep back, even though I'm on a very reduced diet of porn. These are the shifts. We know that studies have confirmed that these are the shifts that happen to people who stop looking at porn. There are now thousands of publicly available accounts from people, mostly boys and men, who gave up porn with life-changing positive results. We seem to have forgotten that people have been masturbating using their imaginations from the beginning of time. Now, every human being is capable of having a healthy relationship that's fulfilling. If they have accurate information, and a respectful partner with whom they can openly discuss safety, consent, and pleasure. Now, some people say that would be so awkward to talk about those things. I would say being naked or partially naked with another person is pretty awkward, and there's really no app that can rescue you from the emotional vulnerability of physical intimacy. And if it's too awkward, clear sign, get your clothes back on. So I want to leave you with a few final thoughts here. Healthy relationships depend on communication. Internet porn is undoubtedly skewing sexual expectations. Therefore, schools need to have comprehensive sexuality education, including porn literacy, and parents need to provide accurate information for their kids and teach them to communicate face-to-face in all their relationships. Sex is an amazing, pleasurable part of life. Most parents want their kids to grow into adults who realize and relish this, and the best chance of that happening is for parents to invest in open conversations about sexuality early and often. Thank you.